Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
Good morning. Good to see you. Helen, the
Thank
first
you.
time I met you was when we were in the old office in Barrington, and you would come in for a class, and you were the first one there because you're usually on early. You and I are. It makes us nervous to be late, so
Right.
we were early. Someone brought in breakfast for us. You got right up and started putting the breakfast out. It was so nice that you were not just waiting for someone to help you, but you took charge of it and did that. I knew at that moment we were going to be friends, and we've been friends ever since.
We have, and I really appreciate that.
Even our husbands know each other.
They do. They do.
I get reports from my husband about what your husband says, so
Of course.
I get secondhand reports with that.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, being a foodie and being cultural, serving is sort of in my blood, and I love to cook and I love to prepare and help, and it's really part of who I am. So
I really like that.
I appreciate that.
What I've been doing when I've been doing interviews now is I go look on your page and I steal. And what I've stolen is not so much your stats, because the flyer has your stats on there, but I stole what people have written about you. So I'm going to read 3 different testimonials that you got, 3 different people talking about you. So give me a minute here.
Oh goodness.
The first one is, Helen and the team are a selling machine. I did like that. If you are looking for someone with a high level of integrity who provides an honest assessment of how to get your house sold, look no further. High energy coupled with superior professionalism and great service. What more could you ask for? We went to a different realtor to start. Our house, after 90 days of little or no activity, we switched to Helen. Our house sold in a couple of days. Thank you so much to Helen and her team. Helen, you've made it seamless and stress-free. Thank you so much. And this one I especially liked. As a real estate investor, I've dealt with Helen and her team on multiple occasions. You will not find a more detailed and responsive agent. In a time when customer service is severely lacking, Helen shines through. Couldn't recommend her more. Those are nice to hear about yourself, aren't they?
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
nice.
it is. It is really nice.
I'm going to start with something you just told me, and then come back to the questions that I have.
Sure.
You said you're opening new territory. Talk to me a little
We
about
are.
that.
So my vision has always been to expand our business.
Okay.
To really master our local markets, saturate them, and then take those blueprints and push them into another marketplace. So we started on the North Shore.
Yes.
I had an office initially in Morton Grove, and we really mastered that North Shore market, and we had a pretty strong, foothold into that market. And then we expanded into the Hawthorne Woods market, and that is a neighborhood and a zip code encompassing 60047. So that's Hawthorne Woods, Long Grove, Lake Zurich, and Killdeer. And we have a physical office there, and we have, imprinted ourselves into that marketplace as well very strongly. And so we're a top brokerage in the Lake County area. And now I found myself in the midst of another opportunity that crossed my path, which further allows me to expand yet again. And now we are expanding into the southern suburban market. I've landed a new construction development, and I've landed a specific developer who develops all over the Chicagoland area, but he really needed my help in taking over the Shanahan Town Center new construction development. He has about 32 homes left, so I just listed them. I just took over the project a couple days ago, and our team is expanding to that southern suburban area, covering Joliet, Shanahan, Plainfield, Minooka, pretty much Orland Park, all of those southern suburban areas.
My old stomping grounds.
I know.
So call me if you need me. I know all about
We
that.
will. And it's great because, I have people and I have, teams everywhere.
Yeah.
And so being able to expand into that market is just the beginning. With this particular developer, we're also going to be developing, I think it's a 99 single-family home subdivision.
Nice.
In the far northwest Lake County area, and that's coming, I would say, early fall. So
and the new construction is
it's
interesting.
funny, it's crazy.
Well, it's crazy because we haven't had much of it.
Right.
So the idea that you're going to be doing that development is
Sure.
going to be really cool.
Well, I think what's really important to recognize is right now everyone is complaining that inventory is quite slim.
Yes.
So one thing that people can depend on is that our company, obviously led and driven by me, has an exorbitant amount of inventory, and that our inventory span will be not only from the north but also to the south. and then eventually to the west, and then to the east. So we're going to kind of circumference around, those 4 target areas. And then from there, expansion, there's no limit. Then we're thinking maybe a couple southern states. I mean, we're really planning on expanding as much as we can, because it's important. Our business and our brand has become well known, and the time is now. So we're actively hiring brokers. We're actively coaching and training. We're really, really building our team and our company so that we can handle it all.
All right, now I'm going to go backwards
Sure.
to this. So I'm always curious, and I think other people in the audience are curious. How did you start doing this? Go back in time a little
Sure.
bit. How did you start doing this?
So I was a teacher for 5.5 years.
Okay.
My actual background is I have a degree in English secondary education. So I taught
So do
middle school all the way through high school
Okay.
for 5.5 years.
Okay.
And I started a master's degree in educational administration, figuring I should be the superintendent, just being who I am, right?
Of course.
I always go for the gold.
Right.
Needless to say, after sort of exploring the educational system, I found that it wasn't a really good match for me, and I was seeking more. And I was driving home from school one day, and I was really upset. And I called my friend, and I was pretty much hysterical. And I said, I don't think I can do this for 30 years. I'm just not made for it. And I come from a family of teachers. My father's a professor. My sister's a teacher. I mean, we come from that background. So it was inevitable that I would follow in those footsteps. However, it was never really the right fit. I think I have a little bit too much energy for that environment. And it can be a little bit, overpowering. And I like to go in many different directions at the same time. So with that said, I left, I called my friend, and I was hysterical crying, and she's like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with you? I said, I don't think I can teach for 30 years. It's just not for me. And she said, you should be a real estate broker. You would be great. She was an agent.
Okay.
And a little bit before that, I had an agent, because my husband and I had just, we were newlyweds. We just got married, and we needed to buy a house. And I remember I hired Chuck from Century 21. And poor Chuck. I was a tough client. I mean, the guy showed me like 80 houses. Needless to say, I found the house myself, did it all backwards, knocked on the door, won the multiple offer because the folks that lived there really liked me. They remembered who I was. I brought in Chuck to help with the deal because I felt bad for Chuck, because Chuck was my agent, even though
Chuck was your agent.
He struggled. And I remember Chuck saying, thank you for doing the right thing and bringing me in. And he said, you really need to be a real estate broker. So that was the first time someone told me, he said, you would be amazing. This was Chuck. A year later, my best friend at that time said the same thing. She said, you need to be a realtor. I drove down the street, pulled into the office in Glenview. And I remember I met the managing broker. I walked in, and he looked me up, and I said, I need to become a real estate broker. How do I do it? And he said, oh my goodness, you're going to be great. And I said, well, how do you know? He goes, oh, I know. And I said, all right. He said, you have to take the class, Helen, and it's $395. I said, I don't have $395. I just got married. I just bought a house. We barely can make our mortgage. And he said, it's okay. I'll pay for your class. You're going to join my brokerage.
Smart
and
man.
then I'm going to reimburse you, or you're going to reimburse me from your first transaction. And I was like, okay, deal, sign me up. I took the course, and I did the fast track. I did it in 1 week, and I passed on a Friday. And the next Friday, I already got my first listing, and it was a farm for $1 million. We would get in the car. We would pack up the car. We had no kids. We'd stick the dog in the back seat. I'd make lunch, and Danny had the map book, because of course, I'm horrible with directions, if you know me. Thank God for navigation. But we didn't have all that when I first started 20 years ago. And so he would drive, and I would go up to everyone and ask them to do business with me. And this older gentleman had this big farm, and his name was Frank. And Frank said, I really like you. He was showing us his cars and all this, and the dog was in the back, and he liked me. And so Frank said, okay, let's go. Where do I sign up? And I didn't know how to fill out a listing agreement. So I called the managing broker. I said, Michael, this guy wants to list with me. What do I do? I said, Danny, keep Frank busy. So Danny's talking to Frank. That's my husband. If you know Danny, he's a very, very terrific conversationalist. So Danny was talking to Frank and showing him the cars, and Michael is telling me how to fill in the listing agreement in the car over the phone. I get out of the car. I had Frank sign it. I went back to the office. It was a big to-do. Oh my gosh, you've had your license for a week. You got a $1 million listing just from who knows what. I had no connections, no family and friends in business, no family and friends in real estate, zero.
You know what? Hang on. I love that story because the first thing that anybody always tells people in real estate is make a list of all your family and friends because you're going to get business from your family and friends. And there are people who, I don't want to say they don't have any family and friends, but they don't have any family and friends at that moment in time.
Well, our whole family, frankly, Deb, they will never move. They're in the same houses that they were in when they moved to America.
Okay.
They're from Greece. I'm Greek. And they will unfortunately pass away in those homes. Like they're not moving ever to this day. So I've never had any family that has done business with me, which is funny because I did hear quite a bit of that. Oh, you can sit floor time and you can, talk to everybody you know. And I'm thinking nobody in my life is going to buy and sell real estate. And I can't sit at the desk. That's why I love teaching. I can't sit in a desk. So I said, I'm just going to go find business. And that's how I started my business.
All right, so after you got the $1 million listing.
Then I got the check.
Then you got the check.
This is the best story. I got the check and I returned the check. And I said to the broker, I said, I think there's a mistake on the check. And he looked at me and he smiled. He said, oh my goodness. I said, what? He goes, that's your cut. I said, no way. There's no way that's my cut. That was a third of my entire year salary as a teacher. And I said, there has to be a mistake. I'm not really good at math. I said, can you show me? And so he showed me. And I remember I was just in awe that was possible. So I went home, I framed it, and I put it right above my little makeshift desk in my unfinished basement of my little 2-bedroom house that we had bought. And I just looked at it every day. And I remember thinking, there's just no way. And then I showed Danny and I said, okay, so you're going to quit your job because you're going to help me. And you're going to help me because I can't possibly do all this myself. I can't do the lock boxes. I can't do, the MLS and the brochures and the flyers. Like, I need to be talking to people. That's my gift. Your gift is kind of doing everything else. And so he said, okay, fine, I quit. He quit his job. I listed 20 homes within like my first month because all I did was focus on what I knew I needed to do, which is what I would encourage people to do, is figure out what you need to do and then do it at the highest level and then delegate everything else. And I'm pretty good at that. It's always a work in progress. I mean, I'm not perfect. I can be quite dominating and controlling, and I always have to know everything that's happening. But if you bring good people around you, I was very blessed. I had a strong workforce behind me,
Do you have a big team? How big is your team right now?
So, how many do we? I think, I just hired another broker.
Well, hold on. Let me back up a minute.
Yeah.
So you started at a traditional brokerage.
I did. I started with Koenig & Stray. And
then you went to?
And then Coldwell Banker.
Okay.
They made me an offer.
Okay.
Because when I went to Koenig & Stray, within 3 months I was number one.
Okay.
And nobody knew how because I had no friends and family in the business.
Okay.
But I would get in the car and I would pull up to construction sites. And I would talk to whomever was there, and then I would find buyers and bring them to those construction sites. And so I started in new construction, which is really crazy because I ended up landing my first new construction development, which was a 20-unit brownstone development in the city of Chicago, the northwest side of Chicago. And I took that from dirt to final sellout, and I didn't know a thing. I'll put it out there. But I had the rigor in me to figure it out. And that's, I think, what makes me a little bit different is I don't have to know, but I will know very quickly.
Okay.
And that's sort of a differentiator, I would say, is nothing intimidates me. Nothing slows me down. I'm always moving forward and learning. I'm a very learning-based person because I don't feel I've ever arrived. So I'm always learning. I'm always training.
You're always in my training.
I'm always coaching.
Always in my classes,
and even though I'm a little distracted because I have a very high level of energy, one ear is always listening.
Okay.
So that's something that sort of differentiates me. So I started there. And then from that development, other developers started to notice me because I was selling so quickly. And so they had projects that were not selling. So they ended up letting their people go. And I took over a 33-unit development in Norwich. And I ended up selling that out. And then he did another like 50 units in Chicago, sold that out. Then I met another developer and another. So now all of a sudden my business was exploding and I was a brand new agent. And all because I prospected. I didn't sit back and wait for the business. I went and I found it any way I could. Being very, after learning what you're supposed to do, not like what I did with Chuck, where I went and knocked on the door. But I wasn't licensed at that time. I was a consumer, I was a buyer. But now knowing what needed to be done properly, I went and got all the business myself. And I didn't wait for anyone to help me or hand it to me. And I think that was a very big contributor to my success and rise in the business very quickly.
I think what you also said is that you were fearless. You weren't
I am still fearless.
You're fearless.
Yeah.
You weren't afraid of anybody that was going to say anything bad. You didn't.
And honestly,
matter.
I have failed. I mean, I always say, tell me no so I can figure out a way to make you say yes.
Okay.
That is the way I live my life. I do not take no well. I mean, I'm just not a no gal.
I like that. Yeah.
I don't even say no to my clients. No is not in my vocabulary.
Okay.
It's, well, we might not be able to do that. However, we can do this. And so I'm very solution-based and I'm very positive, and I don't thrive around any negativity at all.
Okay.
And that is something I really just can't tolerate. So if anyone joins our world and they are more of the negative Nancy's, is what we call them,
yes,
they're probably not in the right environment, because I really believe that you can be anything you want to be if you just put your head to it. And you put in the effort. It's all about
that
effort
thing. Yeah,
that's important.
That's
I mean,
an important part.
I love my career. And it wasn't just because of that first check. It was, I'm going to work tirelessly, but I will be rewarded for that work. And to me, the reward comes not only in the financial side, but when you read these testimonials, like for me, that's really what it's about, is making sure every person in my life, whether you're a buyer, a seller, a broker, a teammate, a staff member, I want you to feel like you are the single most important person in our world, and that we're going to take care of you like you're our family. And we do, and we will. And that's why we are also, selective with who we're
so how many
in business
people are,
with.
How many people are you running on?
I think we have about 4 brokers currently,
okay,
and we are actively hiring.
But that's a very small team. I
Well,
mean, in the team world these days, I'm not, but in the team world these days, you're starting to see teams that have 20 people on them, 30 people on them. I think that's a lot of people.
Well, and I'm not opposed to that type of growth, but I'm going to do it in a different way.
Okay.
I'm going to do it slow and steady with the right people, because I want to be able to promote from within. Our brokerage does everything different. Even from the moment you walk into the door, you'll see we're not a typical brokerage. I've been an agent. I've been a broker. I've walked in their shoes. I know what brokers want, and I know what they don't want. So the way we structure, our business is to be very advantageous for the broker while promoting our brand.
Right.
We want to have one brand. We don't want to have conflicting brands out there. So we want everybody to be on board with our brand, but we're going to give that broker all the resources and tools that they need to be successful. And the beautiful part is we don't charge them for it. So in our brokerage, we're very atypical. We don't do dues and fees. We have a really great
Let's not talk
structure.
too much about that.
Yeah, and we're trying to help the agent be the best they can be.
Okay, so a small team.
Small team, but growing.
And that's great, but I
Sure.
mean, the idea that it's growing organically, smaller.
Right.
I like that. I mean, I think that's a great idea.
It's important to have the right people on your bus. Otherwise, your bus is going to go in a different direction. Because if everyone's not going towards the same goals, then nobody achieves any goals. And that's what I found over time. So, not everyone's a match, unfortunately, but we explore everything, because there's no doubt about it. In the direction that I'm heading, we need help. I can't possibly.
You can't do all. I mean,
can't
you can't
possibly
be down
do it all.
south and up here.
Well,
that's
right,
going to be a tricky
right,
one. I
right.
mean, well, maybe not trickier, but you're going to need help.
Well, we have it, thankfully.
Yes.
We have really great help now, and we're always looking for more. So
Okay, good to know.
yeah, so that's a little bit about my background.
Today, I hear a lot of people who are complaining about no inventory. You've already talked about that a little
Yes.
bit. There's no inventory. What are we going to do? And I've been listening even to like managing brokers. I had a conversation yesterday with the managing broker, and she said, "Oh, this is just, I'm doing a lot of holding on to my people because they're because business isn't what it was. You know, we came out of excuse me, a period of business where people are making a lot of money. Like, you know, when did you and I ever see 2.9% interest rates? I mean, that's just crazy talk. But people who came into that and think, oh, this is great. And now we're in a more normalized market in terms of interest rates, but not necessarily inventory. A lot of companies are finding that to be a challenge. What are you thinking are the biggest challenges today?
So, first of all, I definitely noticed that shift, and I have ridden many markets. In a 20-year career span, I was involved in one of the most historic markets where I started in a business where it was insane and everything was selling and it was multiple offers. And I entered into the real estate world with that type of market. And then from there, I witnessed the big old crash.
Yes.
And from that market, you know, I remember having a conversation in my family room with my husband, and he said, "What are we going to do?" He said, "We're in big trouble. You know, what are we going to do with all of our expenses? How are we going to?" And I just looked at him and I said, "Okay, I don't want you to worry. I'm going to figure it out." I said, "We got this." And that's when I started studying the market, and I realized that we were heading towards a market that was going to be very default driven. Short sales, foreclosures. Well, lo and behold, I became the short sale queen in like 2 months. I had 100 short sales. I was learning them, navigating them, closing them. No one knew what was going on. All I knew is that I had to sell or I would have to close my door. And I had just opened my office in Morton Grove there.
Okay.
I was a mega agent office.
Okay.
So I was given a special exception to be able to operate through there. And I was like, absolutely not. I will never give anyone the satisfaction of letting them know I didn't make it. I'm going to make it through this. So I did all the short sales. And then I got into foreclosures. And that's when, you know, in a down market, you know, I killed it. I did like 400 units in 1 year. For Freddie Mac, I was their top broker. I won an award, Best Neighborhood New Kid on the Block award. I represented Fannie, Freddie, Citi, all of them. So I was an REO broker during that downturn. I didn't like it. I'll be frank. It's a very high volume, low margin business, and it was incredibly staff heavy. I had a team of 25 at that time, and it was mostly staff. I had a billing coordinator, an HOA coordinator, a repair coordinator. I mean, I ran a huge operation with that. So
I think there was also an emotional component to that as well that made it very hard.
well, you know, you're not really dealing with people. You're dealing with asset managers and banks, and it's completely unemotional. And I'm a people person. So all that data entry almost killed me. I was getting 50, 60 offers on an REO, and I had to manually enter all that data. I thought I was going to have a heart attack. And I had 2 kids during that time. I had 2 babies, one right after the other. I mean, I had my baby on the floor, and I'm entering offers into Freddie Mac's portal. And so we did that because we had no choice. There was no business. And then we had COVID. And, of course, we had that conversation again of, like, how are we going to keep the door open? And I said, oh, don't worry, I got it. And I kept us open through COVID, did whatever we had to do. I started all of that Zoom stuff, interviewing people. I started a series called, you know, Real Estate Right Now. People were watching that. So we were still doing business with masks and gloves on, right? And then the crazy market hit that we just can't, you know, which I personally was not a fan of. I'm not a fan of that kind of market. I prefer a more balanced market, or even more of a down market. That's my preference, because I feel like that's when your skill shines, and that's when people need you more. And that's what you'll find in this business. And so that market, you know, came and went, and now the market immediately halted, right, when the rates went up.
Yes.
And so then we had that conversation yet a third time. How are we going to keep the office open? And now the game had changed, because now I'm in a very lucrative area. My expenses were triple what they were in Morton Grove. I have a bigger staff, a bigger team. I never let a single person go during COVID. And to this day, I've never let a single person go. I have kept all my people employed. I've never touched their salaries, their incentives, nothing. Because you are who your people are. And without my people, I'm nothing. So I've always made it a point to keep my people. and I will always keep my people. My one director of operations, she says she jokes with her husband saying, Helen will fire Danny before she fires me. And we all know Danny's my husband, so he can never get fired. Yeah. So, but I think if you're good to people, they're good to you. And so now we're in this market, and we had that conversation one more time. And I said, okay, the first thing we're going to do this time is we're going to slash expenses. We are living incorrectly, both personally and professionally. And how important is this career to us? Like, do we really want to go do something else? The answer is no. It's a non-option.
Okay.
So we went through and we slashed all of our expenses. And I told my agents to do the same. If you don't need it to live, you don't need it. And so I literally cut my expenses by 50%. My husband told me he didn't think it was possible. And I said, don't ever tell me something's not possible. Like, you don't know me clearly.
He's a smart man to tell you certain things.
Yeah. And so that saved us, I'll be honest, especially during the winter months that we just all went through. And then, I guess I'm just not of the mindset that the market's going to control my fate. I feel like I need to control my fate. There's always going to be someone, Deb, that needs to buy or sell real estate. People get married, people get divorced, people pass away, people upsize, downsize, they have more kids, they end up having blended families, they need more bedrooms, people relocate for jobs. I just gave you 9 reasons why people always are engaged in real estate.
One of my favorite realtors, I said in a presentation.
You mean besides me?
Besides you. This is one I've known even longer than you. I mean, I've known him since he was a baby realtor. I mean, an 18-year-old baby realtor. And he did the presentation in his office, and basically here's what he said. The exact same thing. Someone always needs to buy or sell a house. Stop complaining. Get out there and find them. Well, someone always needs to do it.
Here is my perspective. You can complain. Number 1, nobody cares. And number 2, nobody's listening. So why bother? And, you are what you think. So if you know you're the best at your job is to let everyone know you're the best at your job so that when they need to make that move, who are they going to think of? They're going to think of you. I have clients that say to me, if I ever do anything in real estate, I only think of you. And that's why I have many, many multiple repeat customers.
The other thing that I've seen that you do, and I've been watching you for a while do this, is you are spreading your advertising out in interesting ways. Mm-hmm. I see you on the sign. A lot of times when I'm going down, I'm trying to think, would be Rand Road. I'm going down Rand Road or on 20. I see your sign, your billboards.
Sure.
But I'm also watching you do a lot of social media.
Yes.
And a lot of stuff that doesn't have a huge cost. Like a billboard there's a price for that.
Right.
But you're doing a lot of social media where...
Well, right. And here's the thing, it's not for everyone. For me, it's a very natural process. I mean, people don't believe me when I say I do that recording once. It's not edited. It's not filtered. It's really me speaking. Mm-hmm. For me, this is organic. It's natural. It's innate. When you mentioned, can you live stream? I giggled because I'm like, of course. Yeah, that's easy. For me, it's easy. Social media, you have to remember, I do have a background in education, and I did also have a performance background. So I was the star of a show in the city of Chicago called Tony and Tina's Wedding. And I was Tina for 5.5 years. Yes. So I'm
so not surprised that you were
led
great
that
at
whole production.
Yes, I'm so not surprised
for 5.5 years. So for me, not that I'm performing, but it's very natural. I was also on television. I did Early Edition with Kyle Chandler way back in the day. I did one of their big episodes. And so for me, it's very natural to speak. And I also have an English degree. So reading, speaking, writing. I mean, I was probably the only student in college that would stand up in front of the entire, those big auditoriums. Yes. And I had no problem, doing my speech. And the teacher was like, did you practice? I'm like, not really.
In the car on the way here.
No, not really, actually. I didn't even look at the sheet you sent me because I just want to be authentic in myself all the time.
Okay.
And that's another thing you'll find is it just comes natural. For me, social media it's exhausting, I'll be honest, because I do so much of it. But I feel like my audience demands it. And if I don't do it, I always get, well, where were you? Well, what's going on? And I'm a busy lady, so I'm always working.
When you're doing social media, what are the most responded to things that you're doing?
So when I'm on camera, that's when we get the biggest response.
Okay.
So even though I do posts and I do static stories, it's not the same. The minute this mouth starts going, people start to respond. I think it's largely because I'm pretty genuine and authentic. And more importantly, I'm experienced and I study the numbers and I know the numbers and I know the markets. And, my passion really is real estate. Like, I love houses. I love people. And I know it's cliche and everyone says that, but if you know me, you know it's true. My husband will tell you she's never going to retire because she loves it. And it's funny, my son goes, Mommy, I'm going to take over your company one day. And I said, well, that's great. He said, well, when are you going to retire? And my husband goes, never, Dino. And I said, well, probably never. But, I'll sit, a little bit further back and, you can lead. And it's so crazy. I mean, what 11-year-old says I want to work for my mom and I want to take over her business?
Wait 2 more years, he won't.
I don't know. He's a 40-year-old trapped
He's
in an
a
11-year-old's body,
Yeah, that's fascinating to me, is the authenticity and the doing of that.
I mean, you know me, Deb.
I do.
I mean, you
I'm
know
looking
me
at who
like
you are. I am looking right now at who you are.
You know me.
Yes.
There's no. It's just the performance is natural. Like, I've always, I used to sing. I used to dance. I was, I've done it all. I was an 8 scholarship recipient for college basketball. I mean, I have a crazy background, but it's probably because I really always want to be my very best in everything that I'm doing.
I also noticed, because I was looking at you've been working, you're again, I'm going to go back to Fearless, working with investors, working with developers.
Oh, yeah.
Working with, God help you, bless you, with foreclosures when you needed to do that. You did whatever it was and you learned how to do that.
Well, that's the thing, is like nothing scares me in this market because I've seen it all, and so I feel like the more well-rounded you can become, the better. But you also don't want to be the never-ending student that doesn't go out and practice in the world of what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So I really believe that you have to be doing the activities that you're learning. And you have to adjust and adapt it, because not everybody has the persona to do what I do, right? And I don't have the persona to do what other people do. I think we all do what our strength is. And I always say to my team, stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. Like, this is my lane, this is your lane. Because whenever we cross lanes, we start to argue.
I would believe that.
And when you work with your spouse, inevitably there's always going to be a little bit of that crossing of the lanes, but then we kind of check ourselves quickly, because if we don't, I always say we're stronger together than we are divided. So I want the whole team to be together, and everybody can be successful. It doesn't just have to be one person. It just so happens that my name is on the door.
Okay.
Because I started it,
What do you see in the next year? If you're going to have to make a guess and a prediction, what do you see in the next year happening?
I think that the next year is going to be an opportunity for very skill-based people. I think brokers who have a great vision for how they can become successful in this business will align with the right people who are going to help them get there. And I think you're going to see a lot of shifting. I think you'll see lots of mergers and acquisitions, especially for the really large conglomerate brokerages. I think you'll see that sort of dissipating. You'll see some offices making adjustments. Some brick and mortar locations will dissipate and combine. And I think what you'll find is people are going to want a more specialized approach. They're going to want maybe a more boutique style experience, but with global reach. And I guess that's how you could describe what our vision is. We are boutique style wherever we are, but we have global reach. And we will be the person that will, expand to all different markets to be able to help people wherever they need to go. We're going to have agents everywhere, and they're all going to be led and driven by me. And I'm going to spend my time coaching brokers and agents and coaching buyers and sellers on how to set themselves up on the trajectory towards real estate success, because I have to encourage everyone to continue. Don't be afraid of the market. Tackle it. Be a lion. Go out and get your prey. This is what it's about. It's not about sitting back and complaining about it, because by doing that, what are you accomplishing? No one's listening. No one cares. Right?
Fair enough. On that note, Helen, I'm going to say thank you so much for spending this time with us. It's been again, we're friends. It's been a lovely morning to have you in doing this.
Well, I hope I exceeded your expectations.
You did exceed my, it's the worst interview. Yes, no. maybe. You come with a lot of energy here. It
I
makes
do.
it a nice interview.
I do.
So thank you so much, Helen.
Thank you, Deborah.
You're welcome.
I adore working with you.